The transport shuttle landed with a soft thud on the school parking lot. Hannah Kim stepped out into the bright morning sunlight, squinting her eyes against the glare. Her military boots made sharp clicking sounds on the smooth concrete. She carried only one bag, a heavy green duffel that held everything she owned. 3 years ago, she had left Earth as a scared 14-year-old girl. Now she was 17 and coming back as something very different. Her body was lean and strong like a steel wire. Her dark eyes moved quickly from left to right, watching everything around her. Old habits from the war zone never left her mind. The school building rose high in front of her like a glass and steel mountain. Gangnam High School looked nothing like the military bases she had called home for 3 years. Students walked past her in bright, colorful clothes, laughing and talking about things that seemed very small to her now. They worried about homework, and who liked who. She had worried about staying alive. Hannah pulled her student ID card from her pocket. The photo showed a face that looked older than 17. There were small scars on her left cheek from flying metal during the Battle of Kepler Station. Her black hair was cut short and neat, military style. She did not look like the other girls her age. The morning bell rang loud and sharp. Students hurried toward the main entrance, but Hannah did not rush. She had learned to move with purpose, not panic. As she walked through the glass doors, the noise hit her like a wave. Hundreds of voices talking at once, lockers slamming shut, feet running on tile floors. It was chaos, but not the dangerous kind she knew from combat. In the main office, a kind woman with gray hair gave her a schedule and a map of the school. The secretary smiled and spoke in a soft voice that Hannah had to strain to hear. For 3 years, everyone around her had shouted orders or warnings. Gentle voices seemed strange now. Her first class was basic mathematics. Hannah found the room and sat in the back corner where she could see both the door and the windows. The teacher, Mr. Lim, was explaining simple algebra problems. Hannah had calculated missile trajectories and supply logistics during the war. This math felt like a game for children. The student next to her, a boy with thick glasses named Quan, noticed her military posture. She sat straight and still, her hands flat on the desk, ready to move quickly if needed. When another student dropped his heavy textbook, Hannah's body tensed and her head snapped toward the sound. Quan saw her reaction and wondered what had made her so alert. During lunch break, Hannah watched the social groups form in the cafeteria. There were clear lines between different types of students. The rich kids sat together at the best tables near the windows. They wore expensive clothes and talked loudly about their weekend plans. The scholarship students sat quietly in the corner, eating simple packed lunches. At one table, she noticed a group of 5 boys, led by someone who carried himself like an officer. His name was Ta Park, and other students moved out of his way when he walked past. He had the confident walk of someone who was used to giving orders and having them followed. But his eyes were cold in a way that had nothing to do with war or duty. Hannah finished her meal and stood up. As she walked toward the exit, she heard crying from the girls' bathroom. Through the slightly open door, she saw 3 older students surrounding the younger girl. The girl was small and scared, holding the torn backpack. Money scattered on the wet floor around her feet. The scene looked familiar to Hannah. Predators hunting someone weak. The uniforms were different, but the situation was exactly the same. Her hands slowly closed into fists. Hannah pushed the bathroom door open wider. The 3 boys did not notice her enter. They were too busy enjoying their power over the crying girl. The smallest boy held the victim's arms while the other 2 went through her torn backpack. Bills and coins lay scattered across the wet tile floor. "Please give it back," the girl whispered. Her name tag read Mina Song. "That money is for my lunch this week." "You can skip lunch," laughed the tallest boy. "Fat girls should eat less anyway." Hannah's training kicked in automatically. She counted 3 targets. The tall one was the leader, probably 17 years old and about 60 kilograms. The short one holding Mina was nervous and kept looking around. The 3rd boy was focused on counting money and not watching for threats. All three had their backs to the door. Poor tactical awareness. "Let her go," Hannah said in a calm, clear voice. The three boys turned around. The leader looked annoyed at being interrupted. His eyes moved up and down, taking in Hannah's plain clothes and military posture. He decided she was not important enough to worry about. "Walk away, transfer girl," he said with a nasty smile. "This does not concern you." Hannah took one step forward. Her body moved like water, smooth and controlled. "I said let her go." The leader laughed and nodded to his friends. The short boy released Mina and moved toward Hannah. The money counter stepped to her left side. They planned to surround her like they probably did with all their victims. These boys had never faced someone who fought alien soldiers in space battles. When the short boy reached for her arm, Hannah moved faster than his eyes could follow. She caught his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and pushed him face first into the bathroom wall. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small room. He dropped to the floor, holding his nose and crying. The money counter tried to grab her from behind. Hannah spun around and drove her elbow into his stomach. All the air rushed out of his lungs, and he fell to his knees, gasping like a fish out of water. The leader finally understood he was in real danger. He pulled out his phone and pointed it at her like a weapon. "My father will destroy your family. Do you know who I am?" "I know what you are," Hannah replied. She stepped closer and the boy backed against the sink. "You are a predator who hunts weak people. I have killed many predators." Her voice was so cold that the boy started shaking. Something in her dark eyes told him she was not lying about killing. He had never met anyone who looked at him like he was already dead. "Take your friends and leave," Hannah ordered. "Do not touch this girl again." The three boys stumbled out of the bathroom, supporting each other and whimpering. The leader tried to look tough as he left, but his hands were trembling too much to fool anyone. Hannah helped Mina collect her scattered money. The girl was still crying, but now she looked at Hannah with wonder and fear. "Thank you," she whispered, "but you do not understand what you just did. I stopped 3 bullies from stealing your lunch money." "No," Mina shook her head. "You just made enemies of the most powerful family in this school. Ta Park's father owns half the businesses in this district. They will come after you now." Hannah did not understand why she should be afraid of angry teenagers and their rich parents. She had fought against alien war machines that could destroy entire cities. These school bullies seemed like children playing soldier. The bathroom door opened again. A pretty girl with long hair and a friendly smile walked in. Her name tag said Yuna Lee, Student Council Vice President. She looked at the water puddles and overturned trash can, then at Hannah's calm face. "You must be the new transfer student," Yuna said carefully. "I think we need to talk." The next morning, Hannah found a folded piece of paper in her locker. The note was written in careful handwriting that said, "Meet me in the computer lab during lunch. Come alone. A friend." There was no name, but she recognized the neat writing style from the boy who sat next to her in math class. Quan Choi was waiting for her when she arrived at the computer lab. The thin boy with thick glasses sat alone among rows of silent computers. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard like he was playing a musical instrument. Numbers and text flowed across multiple screens in patterns that made no sense to Hannah. "You should not have helped Mina yesterday," he said without looking up from his work. 3 boys were stealing from a girl. I stopped them." "You stopped more than you know." Quan finally turned to face her. His eyes were serious behind his thick glasses. "Do you want to see what you really interrupted?" He clicked a button, and the main screen filled with photos, messages, and financial records. Hannah saw pictures of students crying, bank account numbers, and chat logs full of threats and demands for money. Names and dates filled the margins like a military intelligence report. "I have been tracking this for 8 months, Quan explained. "What happened to Mina was not random bullying. It was business." Hannah moved closer to study the screen. Her training in military intelligence had taught her how to read patterns in data. What she saw made her stomach feel cold. "Show me more." Quan opened another file. Ta Park does not just take lunch money. His group runs protection services, blackmail operations, and debt collection. They have 37 regular victims who pay them money every week. The screen showed a network diagram with Tai at the center and lines connecting him to dozens of other students. Each line had numbers that represented money amounts and payment schedules. Below that were photos of students with bruises, broken belongings, and tear-stained faces. The total income is about 4 million won per month, Quan continued. That is more money than many adults make at regular jobs. Hannah studied the organizational chart. It looked exactly like the enemy command structures she had analyzed during the war. This is not a student club. This is a criminal organization. Yes, and it gets worse. Quan clicked to another screen. These high school groups are connected to adult criminal syndicates in the city. They use the schools as training grounds for future members. The new screen showed connections between multiple schools across the district. Each school had its own network of bullies and victims, but they all reported to the same adult leadership. Phone records showed regular communication between student leaders and known criminals. They teach students how to intimidate people, collect illegal debts, and run protection rackets, Quan explained. The best students get recruited into the adult organizations after graduation. Hannah felt her military training take control of her thoughts. This was not a school problem anymore. This was enemy territory that needed to be mapped and understood before any action could be taken. How did you get this information? I am good with computers. Very good. Quan smiled for the first time. I have been inside their communication systems for months. They think their messages are private, but I see everything. Why are you showing me this? Why not go to the police or the school administration? Quan's smile disappeared. Look at this file. The screen filled with bank records and email conversations. Hannah saw payments from Ta's father to Principal Quan, along with messages about covering up disciplinary incidents and changing student records. Several teachers had also received money to ignore bullying reports. The school administration protects them. The police have family members who work for the same criminal organizations. There is no safe way to report this through normal channels. Hannah stared at the evidence of corruption. During the war, she had learned to identify enemy supply lines, command structures, and weak points in their defenses. This criminal network had all the same elements, just operating in a high school instead of a battlefield. You need help to fight this, she said finally. I need someone who is not afraid of them. Someone who knows how to fight back. Quan looked directly at her. I heard what you did to those 3 boys yesterday. You moved like a soldier. Hannah made her decision. Show me everything. Every name, every connection, every weakness you have found. The war was not over. It had just changed battlefields. 2 weeks had passed since Hannah helped Mina in the bathroom. She thought her show of force would be enough to protect the girl. She was wrong. The harassment had become more clever and more cruel. Taz's group could not directly attack Mina anymore because they were afraid of Hannah. Instead, they used other methods. They spread rumors that Mina had stolen money from other students. They hacked her social media accounts and posted embarrassing photos. They convinced younger students to bump into her and spill food on her clothes. Every morning, Mina arrived at school looking more tired and sad. Her grades dropped. She stopped eating lunch. She started wearing long sleeves to hide the marks where she hurt herself with sharp objects. Hannah tried to stay close to her, but she could not be everywhere at once. On Thursday morning, Mina did not come to school. Hannah felt worried, but thought maybe the girl was sick. By afternoon, news spread through the building like wildfire. Mina Song had swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills and was in the hospital fighting for her life. Hannah sat alone in the empty computer lab, staring at Quan's intelligence files. She had tried to fight this like a civilian. She reported the harassment to teachers who did nothing. She stayed close to victims, but could not protect them all the time. She followed school rules and tried to work within the system. The system was broken. During the war, when enemy forces used tactics that regular weapons could not stop, soldiers learned to adapt. They studied the enemy's weaknesses and used psychological warfare to break their will to fight. They attacked supply lines, communication networks, and command structures instead of just fighting individual battles. Hannah opened a new file on the computer and began typing. At the top of the page, she wrote Operation Clean House. Below that, she started listing targets in order of importance. Jae-won was first on her list. He was Ta's best friend and the one who managed the money from their criminal activities. According to Quan's data, Jae had been stealing funds from the student council budget. Money meant for scholarships and school events went into his personal bank account instead. Hannah studied his daily routine like she once studied enemy patrol patterns. Jae arrived at school early every morning to use the student council office. He stayed late every afternoon to count money and update financial records. He thought he was safe because the office was private, and he had the only key. But Hannah had learned how to move through enemy territory without being seen. She had learned how to plant listening devices and gather evidence. Most importantly, she had learned that information was often more powerful than physical force. The next morning, she followed Jae to the student council office. She waited until he left for first period class, then used skills learned during special operations training to enter the locked room. Inside his desk, she found exactly what Quan's data had predicted: bank statements showing deposits that did not match the official records, receipts for expensive items bought with student funds, photos of him spending money at clubs that students were not old enough to enter. She photographed everything with her phone, then left the office exactly as she found it. Jae would never know someone had been there. That evening, anonymous emails arrived in the inboxes of every school board member, parent association leader, and local news reporter. The emails contained photos of bank records, receipts, and a detailed analysis of how much money Jae had stolen from scholarship students. By the next morning, Jae-won was arrested at his home. His father's business lost 3 major contracts when clients learned about the family's corruption. The student council was disbanded pending a full investigation. Ta Park stood in the school hallway, staring at his phone as news reports about his best friend filled social media. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly. For the first time, he looked afraid. Hannah walked past him without saying a word. The real war was just beginning. 3 days after Jae-won's arrest, Ta Park approached Hannah during lunch break. His usual confident smile looked forced, and his eyes kept moving around the cafeteria like he expected someone to attack him. The loss of his best friend had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. "We need to talk," he said, sitting down across from her without being invited. Hannah continued eating her simple rice and vegetables. She had been expecting this conversation ever since Jae's downfall. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a job." Ta leaned forward and lowered his voice. "You are obviously very good at getting information and causing problems for people. I could use someone with your skills." This was exactly what Hannah had hoped would happen. During the war, she had gone undercover several times to gather intelligence about enemy operations. The key was to make the enemy think recruiting her was their own idea. "Why would I work for you?" she asked with just the right amount of curiosity. "Because fighting me is expensive and dangerous. Look what happened to your friend Mina when she got caught in the middle of our conflict." Tae's voice carried a threat disguised as concern. "It would be much better for everyone if we worked together instead of against each other." Hannah pretended to think about his offer. She let silence stretch between them while she appeared to weigh the pros and cons. Finally, she nodded slowly. "What kind of job?" "Security and information gathering. Some students think they can report us to teachers or parents. You would help us identify these troublemakers before they cause problems." Taz's smile became more genuine. "The pay is very good. Much better than what scholarship students usually make. When do I start?" That evening, Ta brought her to a private meeting room in an expensive restaurant downtown. 7 other students were already there, along with 2 adults in expensive suits. The adults looked like businessmen, but their eyes were cold and calculating in a way that reminded Hannah of enemy officers. "This is our new security specialist," Tai announced to the group. "She has special skills that will be very useful for our operations." One of the adults, a man with gray hair and gold jewelry, studied Hannah carefully. "You are the transfer student who destroyed 3 of our junior members." "Yes, sir." "Good. Fear is an important tool in our business. You understand how to use violence effectively." He gestured for her to sit down. "Let me explain how our organization works." For the next 2 hours, Hannah listened as they described their criminal network. The high school operations were just the beginning. Students who showed talent for intimidation, theft, and violence were recruited into adult criminal syndicates after graduation. They ran protection rackets for local businesses, collected debts for loan sharks, and smuggled illegal goods through the Port District. The school administration was completely corrupted. Principal Quan received monthly payments to ignore disciplinary problems and alter student records. Several teachers were also on the payroll. They identified which students had wealthy parents who would pay to avoid scandals, and which students were vulnerable enough to become victims. "Our success rate is very impressive," the gray-haired man explained with pride. 90% of our high school recruits become valuable adult members. The training they receive here prepares them perfectly for real criminal work. Hannah memorized every name, every connection, and every detail they shared with her. These people saw her as a useful tool, so they spoke freely about their crimes. They had no idea they were giving classified information to someone with military intelligence training. As the meeting ended, Tai handed her a thick envelope full of cash. "Your first assignment is to identify any student who might be gathering information about our activities. Use whatever methods you think are necessary." Hannah took the money and nodded. "I understand." Walking home that night, she felt like she was back in enemy territory during the war. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every friendly face might belong to someone who wanted to hurt her. But she also felt the familiar excitement of a successful infiltration mission. Tomorrow, she would begin feeding false information to the criminal network while gathering real intelligence for Quan. The enemy had just invited her into their most secret operations. They had made a terrible mistake. For 2 weeks, Hannah played her role perfectly. She attended criminal meetings and pretended to hunt for students who might expose their operations. But every piece of information she gathered went straight to Quan's computers. Every secret she learned became a weapon to use against them. The time for playing defense was over. Operation Clean House was about to begin. Hannah met with her allies in the abandoned chemistry lab after school. Quan had his laptop connected to multiple screens showing criminal network data. Lee had joined them after Hannah proved the corruption went deeper than student politics. Even Dr. Sola Ryu, the school counselor, was there. She was a military veteran who recognized Hannah's tactical thinking and quietly offered her support. "The network has 5 major weaknesses," Hannah explained, pointing to a diagram on the whiteboard. "Money trails, communication security, family reputation, legal compliance, and internal trust. We hit all 5 at the same time." Quan pulled up financial records on his main screen. "I have tracked every illegal payment for the past year. Bank transfers, cash deposits, cryptocurrency wallets, everything. When this data gets released, the tax authorities will investigate every family involved." "What about the adult criminals?" Yuna asked. "They are much more dangerous than high school bullies." "That is why we attack their business relationships first," Hannah replied. "These men make money by staying hidden and keeping their crimes secret. When their activities become public knowledge, their legitimate business partners will run away to protect themselves." Dr. Ryu nodded approvingly. "Psychological warfare. Attack their support structure instead of fighting them directly." The first strike came on Monday morning. Anonymous tips reached every major news outlet in the city, complete with photos, bank records, and audio recordings. The evidence showed local businessmen paying protection money to high school students, adult criminals recruiting children for illegal activities, and school officials taking bribes to cover up crimes. By noon, 3 major companies had canceled contracts with businesses owned by criminal network families. 2 city council members demanded immediate investigations. The district school board announced emergency meetings to review administrative procedures. The second strike targeted their communication systems. Quan had been inside their encrypted messaging apps for weeks, recording every conversation. He released selected messages that showed the criminals planning violence against students, discussing illegal drug sales, and bragging about corrupting school officials. Parents across the district read these messages and became furious. They demanded answers from the school administration and threatened to transfer their children to safer schools. The criminals' most important asset, their secrecy, was completely destroyed. The third strike was personal. Hannah used information gathered during her undercover work to expose embarrassing secrets about key network members. Photos of underage drinking, evidence of academic cheating, and records of family financial problems appeared on social media accounts across the school. Todd Park found his private messages about other students posted on the school's main bulletin board. His father's business loans and tax problems became public knowledge. Within hours, his family's social status collapsed as friends and business partners distanced themselves from the scandal. But Hannah's most effective weapon was turning the criminals against each other. She carefully leaked information suggesting that different members were secretly cooperating with police investigations. Paranoia spread through their ranks like a virus. "Someone is feeding information to the authorities," the gray-haired man said during an emergency meeting that Hannah attended. "We have a traitor in our organization." Accusations flew back and forth. Longtime partners suddenly distrusted each other. Some members tried to make deals with police before their former allies could betray them first. The criminal network began eating itself from the inside. By Friday afternoon, the transformation was complete. Students who had lived in fear for months were walking with their heads held high. Teachers who had ignored bullying reports were suddenly very interested in protecting vulnerable students. Principal Quan was placed on administrative leave pending a criminal investigation. Mina returned to school for the first time since her suicide attempt. She looked healthier and stronger than before. When she saw Hannah in the hallway, she smiled and said 2 words that made everything worthwhile. "Thank you." The enemy was in full retreat, but Hannah knew the war was not over yet. Todd Park sat in his expensive car outside the school, staring at his phone screen. News reports about his family's business filled every social media feed. 3 more companies had canceled their contracts that morning. His father's bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Their house was surrounded by reporters asking questions about corruption and criminal connections. 2 weeks ago, he had been the most powerful student in the school. Now he was a social outcast whose former friends avoided him in the hallways. Someone had systematically destroyed everything he had built, and he knew exactly who was responsible. Hannah Kim had played him perfectly. She pretended to join his organization, gained access to their most secret information, then used it to tear them apart from the inside. No high school student should have been smart enough to plan such a complex operation. But Ty was not just any high school student either. His family had connections that reached far beyond school politics. If Hannah wanted to play adult games, he would show her what real adult warfare looked like. The gray-haired man from the restaurant met him in a private office downtown. Mr. Che was not happy about losing millions of won because of one teenage girl. His cold eyes promised violence to anyone who had cost him so much money. "The Kim girl has become a serious problem," Mr. Che said, lighting an expensive cigarette. "She knows too much about our operations. We cannot allow her to continue gathering evidence against us." "What do you want me to do?" Ty asked. "We are going to destroy her using the same system she used against us. Legal warfare, media manipulation, bureaucratic pressure. But we will be much more thorough than she was." The plan was elegant and cruel. They would plant illegal drugs in Hannah's locker, then arrange for police to search the school. At the same time, they would pay several students to claim she had attacked them with weapons. Security camera footage would be mysteriously corrupted, but witness statements would be very detailed and convincing. "Her military background will work against her," Mr. Chad explained with a satisfied smile. People will believe a war veteran might have mental problems that make her violent and unstable. The media loves stories about damaged soldiers who cannot adapt to civilian life. They also plan to attack her through the immigration system. Hannah's veteran status protected her from deportation, but they could create enough bureaucratic problems to make her life miserable. False reports about her conduct would trigger investigations. Her school records would be altered to show violent behavior and academic failure. Within 2 weeks, she will be expelled from school, facing criminal charges and under investigation by multiple government agencies, Mr. Cha promised. Even if she avoids prison, her reputation will be completely destroyed. No school will accept her. No employer will hire her. The trap was set on Thursday morning. Police arrived at the school with search warrants based on anonymous tips about drug dealing. They went straight to Hannah's locker and found a small plastic bag of illegal pills hidden behind her textbooks. At the same time, 3 students went to the principal's office with stories about Hannah threatening them with a knife. They had photos of bruises on their arms and legs. They cried as they described how the dangerous transfer student had been terrorizing innocent classmates for weeks. By noon, Hannah was sitting in a police station wearing handcuffs. Her school bag had been searched, her phone was confiscated, and serious-looking detectives were asking questions about drug possession and assault charges. The evidence against her seemed overwhelming. For the first time since returning from the war, Hannah felt truly helpless. She knew how to fight alien soldiers and destroy enemy bases. She understood military tactics and combat strategy. But she had no training in legal procedures, media manipulation, or bureaucratic warfare. The adult criminals were fighting her on a battlefield where her military skills meant nothing. They were using the civilian system itself as a weapon, and she had no idea how to defend against it. As she sat in the cold interrogation room, Hannah realized she might lose this war after all. The detention center cell was small and cold, with gray concrete walls and a single window that showed only darkness. Hannah sat on the hard metal bench, listening to the sounds of other prisoners in nearby cells. She had been here for 3 days while lawyers argued about bail and evidence. But she was not broken. During the war, she had been captured twice by enemy forces. She knew how to survive in hostile environments and how to think clearly under pressure. The criminals thought they had won by getting her arrested, but they had made a critical mistake. They had given her time to plan. Dr. Solario arrived on Friday evening with a visitor's pass and a briefcase full of documents. The veteran counselor looked angry as she sat down across from Hannah in the small meeting room. The drug evidence was planted, Dr. Ryu said without wasting time on greetings. The pills found in your locker have fingerprints from someone else. The witness statements about assault contain identical phrases that prove they were written by the same person. Can you prove it in court? Maybe. But there is something more important you need to know. Dr. Ryu opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. You are not the only veteran student facing these problems. The folder contained police reports, school disciplinary records, and news articles from across the country. Dozens of military veterans who had enrolled in civilian schools were being arrested on similar charges: drug possession, assault, weapon violations, and disorderly conduct. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. Someone is systematically targeting young veterans who try to return to normal education, Dr. Ryu explained. Every case follows the same script. First, the veteran student intervenes to stop bullying or corruption. Then, evidence appears that destroys their reputation and gets them expelled or arrested. Hannah studied the documents carefully. The cases came from different cities, different schools, and different criminal organizations. But the methods were identical. Plant evidence, pay for false witness statements, corrupt officials to alter records, and use media stories about dangerous veterans to build public support. Who benefits from keeping veterans out of schools? Criminal recruitment networks. Veterans have military training that makes them dangerous to organize crime operations. They understand tactics, leadership, and how to build resistance movements. If they stay in civilian schools, they might organize other students to fight back against criminal influence. Dr. Rio pulled out her phone and showed Hana a secure messaging app. I have been in contact with other veteran advocates across the country. They'd want to coordinate a response to these attacks. That night, Hana used the detention center's computer access to join a video conference with 12 other veteran students from different cities. Each one had faced similar frame-ups and false accusations. Each one had evidence of organized criminal activity in their schools. They are afraid of us, said Dai Kim, a veteran from Busan who had exposed corruption in his school's athletics program. They know we have skills that can destroy their operations. Then we should give them something to really fear, replied Narijan, a veteran from Incheon who had discovered drug-dealing networks in her high school. Instead of fighting alone, we coordinate our efforts. The plan they developed over the next hour was ambitious and dangerous. They would simultaneously expose criminal networks in all 12 schools, releasing evidence at the same time to prevent any single organization from covering up their crimes. Each veteran would use their military training to gather intelligence and coordinate with local allies. Operation Clean Sweep, Hana said as they finalized their strategy. We hit them everywhere at once. 2 days later, Hana's lawyer arrived with surprising news. The prosecutor was dropping all charges due to procedural errors in the evidence collection. Someone had leaked information proving the drugs were planted, and the witness statements were fabricated. As she walked out of the detention center, Hana smiled for the first time in a week. The criminals thought they had won by getting her arrested. Instead, they had given her access to a nationwide network of veteran allies. The real war was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and the promise of justice. At exactly 9 a.m., 12 veteran students across the country activated Operation Clean Sweep. Files containing months of carefully gathered evidence began uploading to news websites, government agencies, and social media platforms simultaneously. Hana stood in the computer lab with Quan, watching the first wave of revelations spread across the internet. Bank records, audio recordings, photos, and communication logs painted a complete picture of organized crime infiltration in schools nationwide. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to deny. The tax authority servers are getting hammered with anonymous tips, Quan reported, monitoring multiple screens. Every criminal family involved is about to face full financial audits. Within 2 hours, the story had exploded across national news. Television reporters stood outside schools in 12 different cities, describing the same pattern of corruption and criminal recruitment. Parent groups demanded immediate action. Politicians called for investigations. Business leaders rushed to distance themselves from anyone connected to the scandals. At Gangnam High School, the transformation was swift and dramatic. Federal investigators arrived with search warrants for Principal Wan's office. They found exactly what Hana's intelligence had predicted: detailed records of bribe payments, altered student files, and communications with known criminals. Tai Park tried to flee the country that afternoon, but airport security arrested him before he could board his father's private jet. Mr. Cha and his entire organization were rounded up in coordinated raids across the city. Years of evidence that Quan had carefully preserved made their convictions inevitable. But the most satisfying moment came when Mina walked into the school cafeteria at lunchtime. She was no longer the scared, broken girl who had tried to end her life weeks earlier. Her head was held high and her voice was strong as she thanked the students who had supported her during her recovery. I want everyone to know that bullying and harassment will never be tolerated here again, she announced to the packed cafeteria. We have people watching who will protect us. Dr. Sola Ryu found Hana after school that day, sitting alone in the empty computer lab where so much of the planning had taken place. The veteran counselor looked proud and exhausted as she sat down next to her young ally. The Department of Education wants to hire you as a consultant, Dr. Ryu said. They want to develop programs that help veteran students adapt to civilian schools and identify criminal infiltration before it becomes established. Hana considered the offer carefully. For months, she had struggled to find her place in a world that seemed so different from the battlefield. She had worried that her military skills had no value in civilian life. This investigation had proven her wrong. What about the other veterans from Operation Clean Sweep? They would be part of the same program, a national network of consultants who understand both military tactics and criminal behavior. Dr. Ryu smiled. The government finally realizes that veterans can be their most effective weapon against organized crime. 2 months later, Hannah stood in front of a classroom filled with newly arrived veteran students. They looked nervous and out of place, just as she had felt on her first day. Some showed signs of combat stress. Others seemed angry at a civilian world they did not understand. "I know this feels strange," she began, her voice calm and confident. "You have been trained to fight enemies who want to destroy everything you care about. Now you are in a place where the threats are harder to see and the rules are different." She gestured to photos on the wall showing the 12 schools that had been cleaned up during Operation Clean Sweep. Students smiled in pictures taken after the criminal networks were destroyed. Teachers stood proudly next to awards for academic excellence. Parent volunteers worked together to build better communities. But the mission is the same as it always was. Protect the innocent. Defeat those who prey on the weak. Never surrender in the face of injustice. Hannah looked into each student's eyes as she delivered her final message. The war never really ends. It just changes battlefields. Outside the classroom window, regular students walked across the campus in safety. They laughed and studied and worried about normal teenage problems. They did not know about the veteran guardians who watched over them. And that was exactly how it should be. The girl who had returned from war had finally found her peace.